Elias Ward had stood in worse places than this. The corridor outside the princess's private wing was long, quiet, and lined with pale blue crystal walls that reflected light like frozen water. It was beautiful, in a cold and distant way. Elias did not admire it. He stood straight, feet planted, hands relaxed but ready, eyes forward. His duty was simple. Nothing passed him without permission. Nothing reached the princess. To the Varelians, that duty was a joke. They were tall, elegant beings with silver skin and long, graceful limbs. Their palace guards wore polished armor and ceremonial blades. Elias wore a simple human combat uniform with no shine left on it. He had been assigned here because no one important wanted the post. The princess was considered safe. The corridor was considered quiet, and the human was considered disposable. Elias did not think that way. He had been a soldier for most of his adult life. Frontier stations, escort missions, boring guard work, he had done it all. He had learned that danger did not announce itself. It arrived when people relaxed, so he did not relax. The first day, the alien guards laughed softly when he arrived. One of them glanced at his file and made a dismissive gesture with long fingers. "A single human?" the guard said in broken trade common. "For a royal wing?" Elias answered calmly. "I'm enough." The guard snorted and turned away. Hours passed. Servants came and went. Officials passed with barely a glance. Elias did not move. He marked every sound, every shift in the air, every change in routine. When his legs began to ache, he adjusted his stance slightly and stayed still. When his eyes burned, he blinked once and focused again. Behind the tall doors, Princess Salith lived her quiet life. She had noticed him the second day. At first, she thought he was another statue. Humans were smaller than Varelians, but something about the way he stood felt different from the other guards. He did not lean. He did not chat. He did not look bored. When she passed him in the corridor, escorted by attendants, his eyes met hers briefly, not with curiosity, not with desire, but with awareness. It unsettled her. Most guards avoided looking at her directly, afraid of doing something wrong. This human looked because it was his job to know who stood before him. Then he looked away, giving her privacy without being told. On the third day, she stopped in front of him. "You are the human," she said. "Yes, Your Highness," Elias replied. "You do not speak much. I speak when needed." She tilted her head slightly. "And, do you believe this post is important?" Elias met her gaze again. "Yes." She waited, expecting more. When none came, she smiled faintly and continued on her way. From that moment, she felt safer. Others began to notice small things. A servant dropped a tray near the corridor. Before the sound fully echoed, Elias had already stepped forward, placing himself between the noise and the princess's door. When nothing followed, he returned to his post without comment. During a minor power flicker, palace guards shifted uneasily. Elias checked the reflection in the crystal walls, watching for movement behind him as well as ahead. Nothing happened, but the senior guard on duty noticed the human's focus and frowned. "Why do you watch the walls?" he asked later. "Because attackers don't always come from where they should," Elias replied. The guard had no answer to that. The queen did not know his name yet. She ruled an empire that spanned dozens of systems. Her days were filled with politics, trade disputes, and power struggles. Her daughter, Salith, was important. Yes, but not fragile. The palace was considered secure. The human posted outside the royal wing was a footnote. That changed on the seventh night. It was a ceremonial evening. Music filled distant halls. Guards were repositioned to protect visiting dignitaries. The palace felt alive, busy, confident. Elias felt wrong. The corridor was too quiet. The servants passed less often. The crystal walls reflected shadows that did not match the usual patterns. He shifted his weight slightly and activated the silent alert on his wrist. A human habit not taught in Varelian training. No response came. He did not relax. A soft sound reached him then, barely more than a breath of displaced air. Elias turned just as a section of the wall behind him shimmered. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a dark-clad figure with an energy blade already igniting. Elias moved. He stepped back, placing himself fully between the attacker and the princess's door, and raised his weapon. The blade struck first, slicing across his shoulder. Pain exploded through him, hot and sharp, but he did not fall. He fired at close range, forcing the attacker to retreat a step. Another figure emerged from the panel. Elias shouted a single word into his comm and threw himself forward. The corridor filled with sound energy, fire, alarms finally screaming, the sharp crack of impacts against crystal walls. Elias took another hit. This one, grazing his side. He felt warm blood soak into his uniform. He did not think about it. He focused on angles, on timing, on keeping the attackers away from the door. One fell. The other tried to rush past him. Elias tackled the figure, slamming both of them into the wall. His vision blurred for a moment, but his grip held. The attacker struggled, stronger than he expected. But Elias had fought stronger before. He drove his elbow down, once, twice, until the resistance stopped. He pushed himself upright, just as palace guards flooded the corridor. The princess's door remained closed, untouched. Elias swayed slightly, then forced himself to stand straight again. Princess Salith opened her door, despite orders to stay inside. She saw the fallen attackers, the damaged wall, the guards staring at the human in stunned silence. She saw the blood on his uniform. "You are hurt," she said softly. "Yes, Your Highness," Elias replied. "You stayed." "Yes." Medical staff rushed forward. As they led Elias away, he looked back once, confirming the corridor was secure. Only then did he allow himself to lean on them. That night, the Queen watched the footage. She saw the human move before alarms sounded. She saw him place his body where others would have placed shields. She saw him continue to fight after being wounded, without hesitation or panic. When the video ended, the room remained silent. "Who is he?" the Queen asked. "Elias Ward," an advisor replied. "Human, low rank, assigned because the post was considered unimportant." The Queen's eyes narrowed. "Bring him to me when he recovers," she said. "I want to look at the one who stood where others would have run." Far away, in a quiet medical room, Elias slept under soft lights, unaware that his simple decision to never abandon his post had just changed his fate. The room smelled clean, almost empty of scent. Smooth white walls curved overhead, and medical instruments hovered nearby, glowing with gentle blue symbols. His body felt heavy, like he had run for days without rest. When he tried to move, a dull ache answered him. He stopped moving. A lesson learned long ago reminded him to check before acting. He looked down slowly. Clean bandages covered his shoulder and side. His uniform was gone, replaced by simple gray clothing. His weapon was not within reach. So this was recovery, he thought. "You are awake." The voice was calm, clear, and not unfriendly. Elias turned his head slightly. Princess Salith stood near the doorway, hands folded in front of her. She wore no crown, no heavy jewelry, only a simple robe. 2 guards stood behind her, but she did not look at them. "Yes, Your Highness," Elias said. "You may call me Princess," she replied. "You are not on duty." Elias paused. "Understood, Princess." She stepped closer, studying him openly. Her eyes were bright, focused. "Not afraid. You were injured protecting me," she said. "Yes." "You did not hesitate." "No." She seemed to consider that. The attackers were not common criminals. They were trained. They knew the palace. Elias nodded once. "That's why they waited for ceremony night." "You expected an attack?" "I expected the chance of one." Silence stretched between them. "Why?" she asked. "You are not Varelian. This is not your world. You gain nothing by dying here." Elias looked at the ceiling for a moment, then back at her. "It was my post." That answer seemed to confuse her more than any long explanation could have. After she left, the Queen arrived. There was no announcement, no sound of trumpets or commands. One moment the room was quiet, and the next, it felt heavier. Elias opened his eyes fully and focused. The queen of the Varelian Empire stood at the foot of his bed. She was taller than her daughter, her silver skin marked with faint lines of age and authority. Her presence filled the room, not with threat, but with certainty. She looked at Elias as if he were a strange object, dangerous, useful, and not fully understood. "You are Elias Ward," she said. "Yes, Your Majesty." "You broke formation," the queen continued. "You moved without orders." "Yes." "You placed your body between my daughter and lethal force." "Yes." The queen tilted her head slightly. "You understand that many guards are trained to protect her. Why did you succeed where others failed?" Elias thought carefully. "Because I wasn't waiting to be told." That answer earned silence. The queen circled the bed slowly. "You fought while wounded. You did not retreat. You did not freeze. You won of this." "I didn't consider retreat an option." "Why?" Elias met her gaze. "Because if I moved away, she would be exposed." The queen stopped. "You understand that such thinking is rare," she said. Elias said nothing. "Rest," the queen ordered at last. "You will recover fully. Then you will speak to my advisors." She turned to leave, then paused. "You may consider this a reward," she added. "Or a test." After she was gone, Elias closed his eyes again. He did not know what test meant in this palace. But he knew one thing clearly. He would pass or fail by the same rule he always followed. In the days that followed, the palace changed. Security tightened. Patrol routes shifted. New protocols appeared overnight. But the biggest change was quieter. Guards began watching Elias. Even injured, he paid attention. He listened to footsteps. He noted timing. When doctors adjusted his bandages, he asked what materials they used and how long they lasted. When guards rotated shifts, he remembered their faces. One evening, a senior Varelian officer approached him. "You noticed the hidden panel before it activated," the officer said. "How?" "The reflection was wrong," Elias replied. "Light bends differently when something moves behind it. That is not taught in our training." "It's taught in human border units," Elias said, "because smugglers use the same tricks." Word spread. Soon, guards began asking questions. Quietly at first. Then openly. Elias explained what he knew in simple terms. How to stand without locking joints. How to watch crowds without staring. How to trust instincts built from experience, not pride. The palace did not officially approve this, but it did not stop it either. Princess Salith visited often. She brought no guards into the room now, only stood nearby while Elias recovered. "You changed something," she said one day. "I did my job," Elias replied. "That is not all," she said. "The guards listen to you. They move differently. They think differently. That's not all." Elias considered that. "They want to protect what matters." She smiled softly. "So do you." When Elias finally returned to duty, the corridor outside the princess's wing felt different. The walls were repaired, but he remembered where they had broken. New sensors were installed. But he trusted his eyes more than machines. He took his position as if he had never left. The guards beside him stood straighter now. That night, another attempt came. Not violent, not direct. A courier arrived with sealed orders, marked with authority from a High Council member. The documents demanded access to the princess for urgent political discussion. Elias read the seals carefully. The language was correct. The symbols were perfect. The timing was wrong. "I cannot allow entry," Elias said. The courier's eyes narrowed. "You are human." "Correct," Elias replied. "But you don't outrank protocol. You delay royal business at your peril." Elias didn't move. "Return with verification." The courier hesitated. Just long enough. Elias activated the alert. The courier ran. Guards moved instantly this time. The corridor filled with motion, clean and controlled. The courier was detained before reaching the exit. The orders were proven false within minutes. Princess Salith watched from behind the door, heart pounding. The queen watched from the security chamber. That night, she summoned her council. "The human sees threats we overlook," she said. "He does not ask who deserves protection. He protects because it is right." Some advisors objected. Humans were unpredictable. Humans were dangerous. Humans did not understand Varelian politics. The Queen raised a hand. "That is why he is valuable," she said. "He does not serve power. He serves duty. He serves duty. On the matter. He does not serve power. He does not serve power. He does not serve power." Elias stood guard as always, unaware of the discussion shaping his future. He did not see the Queen watching him through distant screens. He did not hear the words spoken in quiet chambers, but he felt something had changed. The palace no longer treated him as a temporary solution. He had become something else, and the Queen was not yet ready to let him go. It came through official diplomatic channels, encoded and clean. Elias received it at the start of his shift, displayed briefly on his wrist console before auto-locking for security review. He did not read the full text, but he did not need to. He already knew what it would say. His contract was ending. After 3 standard cycles of service beyond Earth space, human soldiers were recalled. Rotation was not optional. It was policy meant to protect both the soldier and the fragile balance between species. Elias closed the message and took his position outside the princess's wing as he always did. He did not tell anyone. The palace, however, noticed. Princess Salith sensed it first. She had learned to read small changes in behavior, especially in Elias. He stood the same way, watched the same angles, reacted with the same sharp focus, but something was tighter now, held deeper. "You are carrying weight," she said when she passed him in the corridor. "I always do," Elias replied. "This is different." He looked at her, just briefly. "Some things end whether we want them to or not." She did not ask more. But unease followed her into her chambers. Elsewhere in the palace, tension grew. The Queen's intelligence network had uncovered disturbing truths. The assassination attempt had not been the act of a single rival faction. It was a signal, a test of weakness. Several noble houses believed the princess's growing influence, and the Queen's delay in naming a successor made the empire vulnerable. And now, something worse. Human protection had become a symbol. Some saw it as strength, others saw it as insult. During a closed council session, a senior noble spoke openly. "The human stands too close to the royal bloodline," he said. "He influences our guards, our routines, our culture. He does not command them," the Queen replied calmly. "He does not need to," the noble answered. "They follow him." The Queen said nothing. That night, Elias noticed changes in patrol patterns not authorized through official channels. Guards were reassigned without notice. Sensor coverage shifted. Access permissions were delayed. Someone was moving pieces. He reported it. The response was slow, too slow. The next attempt came 3 days later. This time, it was not hidden blades or forged orders. It was chaos. A false emergency alarm triggered in the eastern wing, drawing most palace security away. At the same moment, power fluctuations rolled through the central systems, briefly blinding internal sensors. Elias felt the change in the air before the lights dimmed. He moved instantly. He sealed the princess's corridor and activated manual lockdown, overriding automated systems. The crystal walls hardened, sealing hidden panels. He positioned himself directly in front of the door. Princess Salith emerged despite protocol. "Elias, stay behind me," he said firmly. She did. Footsteps echoed from the far end of the corridor. Not rushing. Controlled. Trained. 3 figures appeared, wearing palace guard armor. Wrong armor. Elias raised his weapon. "Identify." They did not answer. They advanced. Elias fired warning shots. Precise and deliberate. The figures split, trying to flank him. Elias adjusted instantly, forcing them back into a narrow angle. He did not chase. He did not overextend. He guarded. The fight was fast and brutal. Energy bolts scorched the walls. One attacker fell. Another retreated, wounded. The third rushed forward, attempting to break through by force. Elias met him head-on. The impact threw Elias back against the door. Pain flared through old injuries not fully healed. He tasted blood. He stayed upright. Alarms screamed again, real ones this time. The attackers fled. Guards flooded the corridor moments later. Princess Salith was unharmed. Elias was still standing. When the queen arrived, her face was calm but her eyes were cold. "This was not a mistake," she said quietly after reviewing the data. "This was rebellion." Council members were detained. Noble houses were questioned. The empire trembled, but did not break. At the center of it all stood a human who did not belong here. That evening, Elias was summoned. Not to the throne room, to a private chamber overlooking the stars. The queen stood alone, gazing out into the vast darkness beyond the palace shields. "You were recalled," she said without turning. "Yes, Your Majesty. You did not tell me. I was still on duty." She turned then. "You chose silence over advantage. I chose my post." The queen studied him for a long moment. "If you leave, my daughter becomes a symbol of weakness again. If you stay, you become a point of conflict." "I understand. You could walk away," she said. "Return to your world. Live quietly." "Yes. Would you?" Elias did not answer immediately. "I would complete my duty," he said at last. "That duty no longer exists." The queen replied. "Earth has ended it." Elias met her gaze. "Then I will ask permission to redefine it." Silence filled the chamber. "You would remain here by choice?" the queen asked. "Yes." "Without command from your government?" "Yes." "That would make you independent?" "Yes." The queen looked back to the stars. "My empire is built on power," she said slowly. "On bloodlines, and fear, and legacy. Yet you stand here because of none of those things." "I stand here because someone needs to." The queen turned sharply. "Do you understand what others will say? That I favor a human over my own kind?" "I understand," Elias replied. "They already say it." Another silence. Finally, the queen spoke. "I will not force you to stay," she said. "But I will not release you easily either." She stepped closer. "If you remain, it will be under my authority alone. You will answer to the crown, not the council. You will have no rank, only responsibility." Elias did not hesitate. "Accepted." The queen nodded once. "Then prepare yourself," she said. "Because the hardest part is coming." As Elias returned to his post, word spread quietly through the palace. The human was no longer temporary. He was no longer expendable. He had chosen to stand where even royals hesitated. And the galaxy was beginning to take notice. The announcement was brief, but it shook the palace. It did not come with celebration or ceremony. No music, no crowd. Only a single message transmitted through secure channels to every noble house, every military command, and every foreign embassy within range. Royal sentinel, appointed by the crown. Authority derived directly from the queen. No species was named. No rank was listed. Only one identifier followed. Elias Ward. Human. Across the palace, reactions spread in silence first, then whispers, then arguments. Some guards straightened with pride. Others stiffened with unease. A few nobles stared at the message for a long time, as if it might change if they waited. It did not. Elias stood outside Princess Salith's chambers when the message reached him. He felt the soft vibration on his wrist and read it once. Then he locked the display and returned his full attention to the corridor. Nothing about his posture changed. Princess Salith stepped out moments later. She had already seen the message. "They named you," she said quietly. "They gave the role a name," Elias replied. "I'm the same." She studied him for a long moment. "You could have been anything. A hero. A symbol. A weapon. I chose this," he said, standing here. She nodded slowly. "I'm glad." The queen watched from above, from a high chamber overlooking the palace interior. She saw the way Elias stood calm, centered, unmoved by attention. She had ruled long enough to recognize rare things. Power that did not seek power. The reaction beyond the palace was stronger. Earth responded within hours. Not with anger, not with threats. Only a single question sent through diplomatic channels. Is the human there by choice? The queen answered herself. Yes. Earth did not object. That silence carried weight. Other species noticed. Requests followed. Quiet at first, then official. Inquiries about human sentinels, human advisors, human guards trained not in ceremony, but in responsibility. The queen allowed none of them. Not yet. Inside the empire, resistance hardened. A final faction moved openly at last. They struck during the day of renewal, when the palace opened its gates to the public. Thousands filled the outer halls. Music echoed. Tradition demanded lowered weapons and relaxed security. Elias disagreed with tradition. He adjusted patrol patterns anyway. He positioned guards where crowds naturally slowed. He marked blind spots no architect had considered. He stayed close to Princess Salith, never touching, never crowding, always present. He felt it seconds before it happened. The air shifted. Not sound. Not motion. Intent. Stay behind me, he said. The explosion tore through a distant wing, sending shockwaves through the palace. Panic surged. People screamed. Guards froze, overwhelmed by conflicting orders. Elias moved. He guided the princess through a side corridor as emergency shutters slammed down. Smoke filled the air. The smell of burned energy coils stung his lungs. They reached the inner chamber just as armed figures forced entry from above, descending through shattered ceiling panels. Elias turned and raised his weapon. There were too many. So he changed the rules. He triggered localized gravity shifts, forcing attackers off balance. He used the environment, the walls, the floor, the angles. He did not rush. He did not chase. He held ground. One by one, attackers fell back. Not because he was stronger, because he refused to move. By the time palace forces arrived, the threat was broken. Princess Salith was unharmed. Again. The queen arrived soon after, stepping over shattered stone and fallen weapons. She looked at Elias, at the damage, at the unbroken door behind him. It is finished, she said. Yes, Your Majesty, Elias replied. The arrests that followed ended the rebellion. Noble houses were stripped of power. Council seats were dissolved. The empire stabilized, not through fear, but clarity. Weeks later, the queen summoned Elias one last time. Not as a test, as acknowledgement. You stood guard, she said. And in doing so, you reshaped how my people understand strength. I did what was needed. Yes, she agreed. And that is why I cannot let you go. She stepped forward and placed a small insignia in his hand. Simple. Unadorned. You are free to leave at any time, she said. But as long as you stand here, you stand as my equal in duty. Elias accepted the insignia and attached it to his uniform. I'll stand, he said. The queen inclined her head, a gesture never given lightly. From that day on, the palace changed. Guards trained differently. Leaders listened more closely. Strength was no longer measured only by blood or power, but by who stayed when leaving was easier. And in a quiet corridor of crystal and light, a human stood watch. Not because he was ordered to, not because he was bound, but because someone needed him to stay, and the queen of an empire made sure no one would ever force him to leave again.